Aló. Hello, girlies. My name is Singular Dubs, and welcome to another episode of Aló. And because we're making this a tradition, the drink of the day, it's some peppermint tea with honey and water in none other than my Owala, which is my emotional support water bottle. And if you don't have a drink with you, then go get one because it makes this little chit-chat that much more enjoyable. And if you don't know what this podcast is about, we talk about day-to-day stuff that might seem a little silly, but maybe sometimes you don't internalize. And, of course, I will give you some gossip, some tea of chisme that's happened throughout my life. And I'll always leave you with a lesson on how to improve yourself regarding that topic. And today, we are talking about a thing that is honestly such a struggle for me on day-to-day stuff, and it's to forget perfection and simply make progress. Yes, you heard that right. Forget perfection and just make progress. I feel like most of the times we try to stick to something being perfect and try the absolute best we can. And at the end of the day, that goal is actually holding us back from actually tackling the things that we want to tackle. So it's actually, like, I think back in the day, being a perfectionist used to be, like, such a brag. And now it's like, dude, are you a perfectionist? Yeah, okay, then are you still getting things done? Because most perfectionists are not getting things done. And if you are that girly that, like me, feel like you hesitate a lot to get things done and you overthink everything and you end up in this cycle of wanting to do it, overthinking it, trying to make some progress and then never getting it done because it's never perfect enough, then trust me, this episode is for you. Let me ask you this. Literally, how many times have you been stopped from doing something that you've been dreaming about doing for a long time because you weren't ready? Or what if it fails? What if it's not good enough? What if, no, I don't know enough about it yet. I need to instruct myself a little better. And at the end of the day, you make no moves toward that thing that you wanted. All of that is the perfectionism, like literally whispering to your brain, no, you're not good enough. You can't do this. Like, it's not that you want it to be the best thing it's ever been. It's literally just your brain telling you you're not good enough. And at the end of the day, that's what perfectionism is. It's the belief that something is never good enough. And this can translate to basically anything. Like, did you want to start writing a book? Did you want to start a fitness journey? Did you want to change jobs? Do you want to start a podcast? Do you want to be an influencer? Whatever it is, if you haven't started because you're not good enough, then that is literally perfectionism whispering on your little brain. But to be honest, in my train of thought, perfectionism is just a myth. It's the belief that nothing is ever good enough to be put out there, okay? And I think it's just your brain judging you and comparing yourself with what's already out there. And so I'm going to tell you the time that I literally waited 5 years to do something that was my absolute dream because it wasn't perfect. I've been wanting to start a podcast since, I kid you not, 2018. I remember the first podcast I even listened to was Pretty Basic by Alicia and Remy. And since I listened to those two girls, and at the time was audio only, I literally said, oh my goodness, this is what I want to do with my career. Like, I want to do a podcast so freaking bad. Because if there's something I'm good at, it's talking. Like, literally right now, my throat is hurting. I'm probably starting to get a cold. And all I want to do is talk. Like, I have so many things to talk about, and I feel like I need to share them with the world. And I waited maybe more than 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 6 years. I waited 6 years to get the podcast started. That is outrageous. And at the end of the day, I would always blame it on, no, the podcast is just not good enough yet. The concept is not good enough. The promotional is not good enough. Nothing that I'm doing for it, it's good enough for now. Honestly, it was just such a cheap excuse. I could have literally found anything else as opposed to saying, it's just not good enough. Girl, get it together. But the reality of it is that I was comparing the possibility of my podcast with the podcasts that were out there. Because at the time, there weren't a lot of solo hosted podcasts. And although I think that there were a lot of women podcasts, those weren't the ones that were, leading the charts. And I know maybe Call Her Daddy has always been leading the charts. And, although it had two hosts in the beginning, now it's solo hosted. But she has a lot of guests. And although you have my little chair here, of course I would like a guest. At the moment, it's just me. And I want to be comfortable enough with it being just me. And back then in 2018, I used to see other podcasts and say, no, it's like no one's going to like me because who wants to hear a fucking monologue for 1 hour of somebody just talking about their life? Mind you, no, I'm not just talking about my life. I'm leaving you with something for you to learn. But I always stopped myself. And I always said, no, the camera is not good enough. The lighting is not good enough. The setup is not good enough. And this ties us back to the title of the podcast of Forget Perfection and Just Make Progress. This is, I believe when I put this out, is going to be my 3rd episode. And when I started my first episode, this was not my setup, okay? But when I launched, I knew that I had to forget perfection because it was never going to be good enough to my standards. So if it's never going to be good enough, then I might as well just launch it as good as it is right now and make it better as I go. And this is something that should apply to business, to absolutely anything. I mean, I'm not telling you go into anything just not knowing and blindsided. No. Learn about what you want to do, try to be as good as you can, and then launch. Because you best believe I did a lot of research about the mics, I did a lot of research about the camera, about the settings, about market. I did a lot of market research to learn what people were listening to see what people found value in. Like, I did a lot of research, so I didn't just go into this not knowing. But I also didn't go into this being perfect. And if you are listening, I would recommend you go to Spotify or to YouTube, because I'm going to attach a picture here of what the setup looked like when I started, which is honestly not that different. I just changed the chairs. I have a little bit of fancier chairs now, and I have like a picture and stuff. And to be honest, I'm going to better it every day. I have a couple ideas in mind of what I want to put in the walls. But bottom line is, it does not have to be perfect for you to start. Because also, guess what? Let's say I had started the podcast and, it was the absolute best podcast. I bought the CB2 chairs and the West Elm paintings and whatever else. In reality, if I launched that podcast and the podcast did not perform to the extent that I wanted to, I didn't get the numbers that I wanted, I didn't get the exposure that I wanted, I would have been so depressed, and I would have felt like my podcast wasn't good enough. Even though I gave it my all, it was not enough. And that would have brought me down for sure. As opposed to when I launched the podcast and when I launched the first episode, I didn't love the chairs that I had. I didn't love the setup that I had. But I knew that what I was talking about was valuable. Therefore, the chairs were in the back burner. And I said, when I find prettier chairs, I'll just swap them out. So you see what I'm doing? I'm forgetting about perfection and I'm simply making progress. At that point, the progress meant to launch the first episode. The second episode, the progress was to do better editing. In the third episode, the progress that I did was to change the setup, and that to me is a win because I'm just making progress. But bottom line is, the whole idea of having the perfect podcast held me back for 5 years. 5 years. 6 years. It held me back for 6 years. Isn't that insane? Imagine I had launched the podcast back in 2018. I mean, they probably wouldn't have been as pretty as now and with a nice camera, because I definitely didn't have the budget for that back in 2018. But I would have started to build a community back then. And who knows if it would be better now, if it would be bigger now, if I had the budget at this point because of what I made through the podcast. I have no idea what could have happened. And trust me, that's an episode for another podcast. FOMO versus JOMO. It's going to be such a slay. Chef's kiss. But if I had started back in 2018, I wouldn't have the competition that I have now, because there weren't as many podcasts out as there are now. So this whole idea of perfect held me back for so long. Please do not allow it to hold you back for that long too. And the idea that perfectionism is going to protect you and it's going to make your thing as best as it possibly can, it's a lie. Perfectionism, it's a cage that keeps you stuck, and it doesn't let you move forward, move backward. It doesn't let you make any move, because you're simply there and you're simply waiting for something to be good enough, and that sucks. The truth is that nothing gets better until you start it, and it's better to start messy, to start it being not cute, versus not starting at all. At this point, you might be wondering, if perfectionism is bad and if perfectionism is keeping me stuck, then how do I change it? How do I change my mind? How do I do a brain rebrand? I think that if your end goal is to forget about perfectionism, you need to redefine success and what success means to you, okay? Because to me, success meant launching a podcast. To me, success didn't mean launching the best podcast in the world. It might mean that at some point, but not right now. To me, success was launching my podcast. So I focused on the smaller steps that I could do to achieve this. And I actually started using this app called Trello. It's Trello. And it's kind of like a time management, like task tracking type of app. And it's very visual, so I really, really liked it because I'm a very, very visual person. And I started by doing the smaller tasks versus the bigger tasks. So to me, a bigger task was to record and edit an episode versus the smaller task was to buy all the props for the promotional video of the podcast. That was a smaller task. Then a bigger task was to record the promotional video. So I broke down all of the tasks that were going to help me achieve the success that was to launch the podcast. So number 1, done is better than perfect. Trust me, it is. Was my first episode perfect? Absolutely not. Far from it. Is it better than not posting anything? Yeah. Number 2, focus on growth and not the results. To me, the growth meant to actually put my podcast out there and staying consistent with it for a couple of weeks, maybe for the longevity of it, but not the results. So listen, my podcast has maybe 15 streams on Spotify and 15 streams on YouTube and a couple followers on Instagram. To me, that it does not define if my podcast is good or not. To me, my podcast is good because I like what I'm doing and I like what I'm putting out there and I like what I'm talking about. It might not be reaching the right people yet or as much people yet, but to me, it's growth. Number 3, as part of our rebrand, is to embrace imperfectionism. It's part of the journey. And to be honest, you're going to be that much more joyful when you start something and it wasn't quote unquote perfect versus when you do. Like, listen. If I had started this podcast with my dream chairs and my dream setup and my dream mic and absolutely everything else and the dream outfit, and I continue to do that for the next 2 years and the podcast doesn't have any growth, and I'm going to be like, God damn it. But because I started the podcast with the ugly chairs, I mean, they're not ugly, they're just wearing my dream chairs. Now that I have these beautiful chairs, I adore them. I appreciate them that much more. And to me, it means a lot. It's like, oh, look, it's progress. It's like, it makes me feel giddy on the inside to feel like I'm doing something better every single time. For the brain rebrand, besties, you have to take action. Think about what's something that you've been putting off for a long time that you could do a little step towards it today. Let's say you want to start your fitness journey. And one step towards it is to buy a pair of working out shoes. It's to buy an outfit to work out. If you buy it, are you going to feel more motivated to go to the gym? Probably. So is it a step towards it? Yeah. A step towards it could also be start eating better. Because if you start eating better, then you're going to have more energy to actually work out. I work out every day at 5 a.m. Am I tired every morning? Absolutely. Do I feel better after I do it? Yeah. But I also need a lot of things regarding the whole working out thing that is not just showing up to the gym. I need the outfit, I need the hair, I need all of the little products and knickknacks because I'm a girly pop and that's what I like having. So every time Fabletics sends me an outfit, you best believe I want to wear it to the gym the next day. So could this be you? So what small task, what small thing can you try to do to reach your end goal? And now that we talked about getting progress done as opposed to getting things done perfectly, how do we let go of the judgment that's installed in our brains of, no, you can't do it unless it's the absolute best thing out there? How do we let go of that judgment? Because to be honest, judgment is just like a whole other layer of perfectionism where we're always judging ourselves based off of what are other people going to think, what are other people going to say if it's not perfect, if it's not this way or that way. And to be honest, I know this is like so repeated for literally everybody, but no one is paying that much attention. Trust me, you are not that important. Unless you're Sophia Richie doing the Sophia Richie dance, which, like, can we just admit she was literally just moving her shoulders? Like, that's not a dance. People are not caring whether whatever you're doing is perfect or not. They're more so going to care if you're doing something or not. Perfect or not, are you doing anything? Because, hear me out, when I started making TikToks and making Instagram and whatever else, I started doing it in Spanish and it didn't have the reach that I quite expected. And then I moved on to English and I started seeing a little bit more numbers there. And all of the people that I knew from back home, back in my country, everyone was like, so do you think you're gringa now? Like, why are you making this in English? And I'm like, because I can. And that was the end of that. No one again ever questioned me of why I was doing it in one language versus the other. But you best believe everybody's now watching my little TikToks and seeing my little Instagram stories because that's as much as they care about. They don't care if my house is clean or not. They just care that I posted a story. I saw a TikTok the other day, or it might have been a Pinterest quote. I have no idea. But it said something like, you can make progress and look pretty at the same time. And that's honestly very true. And to tie it back again to my little chairs, I was making progress by doing the podcast. It wasn't pretty because the chairs weren't pretty, but I was making progress. Now, let's say with TikTok, like, the progress might mean to make the TikTok, but it might not be as pretty. The editing might not be as pretty. Like, editing is not a pretty side of making content because it takes a long time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of thought. So that's not pretty, but it's progress. And to be 100% honest with you, that is what growth is at the end of the day. It might be clumsy, it might be messy, but it's growth. And embracing it will change your whole mindset about getting things done perfectly. Because staying in the same place, which is the alternative, as opposed to making progress, it's even worse than it having it be ugly. Because I don't know about you, but I would rather have an ugly process than be stuck at the same place for a long time. And I think the best example of this I can give you is for a long time, and mind you, I come from a country where the beauty standards are insanely high, okay, because we have the most amount of pageant crowns won in the world and whatever else. I'm from Venezuela, and I think the beauty standards are so incredibly high, and I think that have been stopping me from actually just being out there and making content. I know I wouldn't post a TikTok unless I looked really, really pretty. Do I look really, really pretty every day? Absolutely not. Can I make myself look a little prettier? Yeah. Do I look pretty every day? No, and that's not my reality. But recently, I posted a TikTok and I literally had a face mask on and a bun in my head, okay? Like, I did not look cute whatsoever. That video got 50,000 views, maybe 60,000, I don't even remember. And then I posted another TikTok and I was at Trader Joe's, also bun in my head, glasses on, zero makeup, zero filter, 500,000 views. Like, that's insane. And I think this whole example ties back to the progress isn't pretty all the time. Because I didn't look pretty in either of those videos, but those videos got me hundreds of followers and hundreds of thousands of views. And to wrap this episode, I would like to do a little challenge, girly pops. This week, I want you to make progress towards something that you've been overthinking for a long time, or maybe even a short time, whether that is your fitness journey, or starting a podcast, starting a TikTok, starting posting on Instagram, writing a book, cleaning your house, whatever goal that you've been just putting off because it isn't perfect, I want you to take a step at it. And remember, like, it does not have to be perfect, it just has to be a step. Like, if you've been trying to clean your house, I get very overwhelmed by cleaning mine because I just have a lot of stuff. So what I do when I get overwhelmed is that I'll get my little red wagon, I unfold it, and I'll start whatever I see out of place, I'll just put it on the wagon. And even if it's not the same day that I can deal with it, the next day or like throughout the week, I'll start putting things away out of the wagon. But they're all out of the way. So the goal was to clean the house. The goal wasn't to clean the house in one day. It was to clean the house. So bottom line, just get a little stab at whatever you've been trying to accomplish. And girlies, progress beats perfection every single freaking time. No one can fight me on that. Every single time. And once you realize that, honestly, you're gonna be so much joyful in life. And if this episode resonated with you, with what you're going through in life, I would love to hear from you on socials. Please feel free to DM me. The podcast socials are at It's a Love Podcast, and my socials are at Dubs on every platform. And if you found it helpful in any way, share it with a friend that you know has been overthinking that blog, has been overthinking that cooking class. They've been overthinking it. Just send it to them. Maybe they need the little push. And again, thank you so much for giving me your time and spending time with me. I cannot wait to talk to you next week. Besitos!